Right now, somewhere in your city, a traffic light is changing. Green to yellow to red. Nobody asked it to, nobody is watching it, it just does what it was built to do. Now imagine every human on Earth vanishes. Not killed, not buried, not leaving bodies behind, just gone in an instant. All 8 billion of us. The traffic light keeps changing, for a while. What happens next is not what you'd expect, and the timeline of how fast the world forgets us is one of the most unsettling things science has ever mapped. Let's start with the first hour. The power grids go first. Not all at once, but faster than most people assume. Modern electrical grids are not passive systems. They require constant human intervention to stay balanced. Operators monitor load and generation in real time, every minute of every day. Without them, the balance breaks. Demand drops to zero. But generation doesn't stop immediately. Nuclear plants keep running, coal plants keep burning, hydroelectric dams keep spinning, and with no one drawing power, the voltage spikes. Transformers overheat, circuit breakers trip. Within hours, cascading failures move across the grid like a wave. By the end of the first day, most of the world is dark, and when the lights go out, something else begins. The nuclear plants. There are 440 of them operating worldwide right now. Every single one requires active cooling to keep the reactor core from overheating. When the operators walk away, or in this case vanish, the cooling systems run on backup power. Diesel generators kick in automatically, but diesel generators require diesel, and diesel requires humans to deliver it. Within days, the fuel runs out. The cooling fails. The cores begin to melt. Not one Chernobyl, not one Fukushima, 440 of them, simultaneously, across every continent on Earth. This is the first thing the world inherits from us. Not our art, not our cities, not our language, our reactors. But here's what's strange. Even this, given enough time, the Earth absorbs. Chernobyl taught us that. The exclusion zone around the plant, the 30-kilometer radius where no human has lived since 1986, is now one of the most biodiverse regions in Europe. Wolves, bears, lynx, bison, all of them thriving inside the ruins of a nuclear disaster. Because as toxic as radiation is, it turns out it is less damaging to wildlife than the simple daily presence of human beings. Nature doesn't wait for our permission to come back. It was always waiting. Now we're 1 week in. The pets go next. Or rather, the pets that can't fend for themselves. Dogs, especially the smaller, domesticated breeds, were never built for the wild. They were built for us. A Chihuahua in an empty apartment has maybe 3 days before dehydration becomes lethal. Larger dogs fare better. They can break through weakened structures. They can find water. They can hunt. And within a few generations, domesticated dogs begin reverting. Not back to wolves, that process took tens of thousands of years, but towards something older, leaner, more cautious, more feral. The bond we spent 15,000 years building begins to dissolve in a single lifetime. Meanwhile, the oceans are already changing. Commercial fishing fleets sit empty in harbors. Trawlers that dragged the ocean floor every day of every year are now rusting at their docks. Within a decade, fish populations begin recovering at a rate marine biologists describe as dramatic. The Grand Banks off Newfoundland, which were fished nearly to extinction by the 1990s, start filling again. Coral reefs, which were bleaching and dying under the heat of runoff and pollution, begin showing signs of recovery. Not full recovery, not quickly. The ocean has a long memory, but it begins. Now we're 1 month in. The cities are already losing their war with water. Every city on Earth is fighting a constant battle against groundwater. Pumps run day and night beneath London, New York, Tokyo, pulling water out of the foundations, keeping the subways from flooding, keeping the tunnels passable. Without operators, the pumps stop. Within weeks, the London Underground is underwater. The New York subway system floods completely. The tunnels beneath downtown Chicago fill. The cities we built are sitting on top of water tables that have been waiting patiently for centuries for the pumps to stop. And the plants don't wait either. Weeds are not a modern invention. They are the Earth's default state. Within a single growing season, cracks in the pavement begin to widen. Roots find the gaps. Concrete, which looks permanent to us, is just compressed rubble with a lifespan of 50 to 100 years before nature begins to reclaim it. In warmer climates, the tropics, Southeast Asia, Central America, the jungle moves faster than anywhere else. In Angkor Wat in Cambodia, you can still see what happens when humans leave a city for long enough. Trees growing through temple walls, roots wrapped around stone carvings like hands. Nature doesn't demolish our structures, it incorporates them. Now we're 10 years in. The Eiffel Tower is beginning to rust. Without the painters who repainted every 7 years, the iron is already corroding. Bridges are becoming dangerous. The suspension cables on the Golden Gate Bridge, which require constant maintenance to prevent corrosion, are beginning to fray. Steel, it turns out, is one of the least permanent things we ever made. It looks like forever. It lasts maybe a century without human hands keeping it alive. Meanwhile, something is happening in the sky. Nitrogen dioxide levels, which come almost entirely from vehicle emissions and industry, have dropped to near zero. The air over cities that used to be brown with smog is now clear, and without light pollution, the night sky visible from what used to be London or New York looks the way it looked 10,000 years ago. The Milky Way, stretched across the dark, visible to anyone who might be there to see it. No one is, but it's there. Now we're 100 years in. Entire neighborhoods have collapsed. Wood-framed houses, which is most of suburban America, are already gone. Termites, moisture, mold, rot. It takes less than a century for a wooden house to return completely to soil. Brick structures last longer. Some concrete buildings still stand, though they're draped in vines, cracked at the foundations, and slowly being pulled apart by root systems that have been growing uninterrupted for generations. The large mammals are spreading into places they haven't occupied in centuries. Wolves have crossed back into Western Europe. Cougars have reclaimed the eastern United States. In India, tigers are moving through what were once the suburbs of Mumbai. The predators come first, because the prey animals came before them, and the prey animals came because the farms were abandoned. Cattle and pigs and chickens, left without fencing, began competing with wild species. Most of the domesticated breeds don't survive. They were too specialized for comfort, not survival. But a few, the hardiest, the most adaptable, find their place in the new order. Now we're 10,000 years in. This is where it gets strange. The concrete is gone, almost all of it. The steel is rust-stained soil. The glass actually lasts a very long time, geologically speaking, is buried under meters of sediment. The dams have failed. Rivers that were redirected a century ago have found their old channels. Coastlines have shifted. The cities that used to sit at sea level are now features of the underwater continental shelf. What remains? Some things surprised the scientists who modeled this. Stone structures last the longest. The pyramids of Giza, built with limestone blocks too large and too dry to be easily colonized by roots, are still standing, recognizable, weathered, but standing. Mount Rushmore, carved directly into granite, is still legible, though the features are softened by erosion, the faces in the stone fading slowly back into the mountain. The other thing that lasts is plastic. We have produced roughly 9 billion tons of plastic since 1950. Most of it is still here, somewhere, in landfills, in ocean sediment, in river deltas. Plastic does not biodegrade, it photodegrades. It breaks into smaller and smaller pieces, but the polymer chains persist. 10,000 years from now, a geologist drilling through the Earth's strata would find a thin, strange layer unlike anything in the planet's 4.5 billion year history. A layer of microplastics, compressed into the rock. A signature left not in monuments or language, but in the accumulation of a material we treated as disposable. That is what we will leave behind. Not the Eiffel Tower, not the pyramids, not the satellites still orbiting silently above an empty Earth. Our most permanent mark on this planet is the wrapper from a water bottle buried under 30 feet of sediment 10,000 years from now. Here's the part nobody talks about. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Anatomically, modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. That is 0.006% of Earth's history, a rounding error, a breath. And in that rounding error, we reshaped the atmosphere, redirected rivers, drove hundreds of species to extinction, and left a layer of synthetic material in the geological record that will outlast everything we ever called civilization. The world would not mourn us. It would not celebrate either. It would simply continue. The way it continued through the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. The way it continued through 5 mass extinctions before we ever arrived. The planet does not have a preference. But here's the question that sits underneath all of this. If everything we built disappears in 10,000 years, which is nothing geologically, if the only permanent trace we leave is plastic, what does that say about what we were actually doing here? We spent 300,000 years building fires and telling stories. We spent the last 200 trying to replace the darkness we lived in with light we manufactured ourselves. And the moment we're gone, the darkness comes back. The fires go out. The stories stop. And the night becomes once again what it always was. The traffic light eventually stops changing. The bulb burns out. The casing corrodes. The intersection disappears under a field of grass. And somewhere above it, unbothered, the Milky Way stretches across a sky that has never needed us to be beautiful.